Hi and welcome to the Homeopathy Health Show. I'm Atiq Ahmad Bhatti, a fourth generation homeopath with over 20 years of professional experience in this field of healing. In the Homeopathy Health Show, I'll be talking all things homeopathy and natural, with guest interviews, tips and advice, and answering some of your questions. Homeopathy is truly a unique complementary system of healing suitable for all ages, young and old. I'd love to hear from you and welcome your questions on homeopathy and how it can or has helped you. Feel free to email me at health@liketreatslike.co.uk or visit www.liketreatslike.co.uk for more information. Whilst you're there, take a look at the Knowledge Academy and blog section, where you will find interesting information. Both sections are growing day by day, so always check back. So let's begin today's show on UK Health Radio, the world's #1 talk health radio, real feel-good radio. I'm delighted to introduce my special guest this week, Luke Norland. Now, Luke has a homeopathy practice in Frome and Bristol, combining this with his role as the UK coordinator for Radar Opus and his teaching work actually at the School of Homeopathy. Luke has a very interesting background, actually, with similarities to my own experience growing up. He grew up sharing his family home with the School of Homeopathy, which is based in Gloucestershire, run by his father, Misha Norland, who was also one of the founding members of the Society of Homeopaths. Now, even more interesting is that Luke studied classical music before homeopathy. Luke, I'm absolutely delighted to have you on the show today. Thank you so much. How are you?
Thank you. I'm well. It's a pleasure to be here and be talking about homeopathy with you. It seems that there are similarities in our stories, and that we both have it in our family, in the DNA, so to speak. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, today actually seems to be a show of similarities or similars. So we're certainly on the right track, aren't we, here, as far as the law of similars goes? Similia similibus. A truly great start.
Yeah, absolutely. And I remember one of the things that my father doesn't run the school anymore. He passed away, sadly, but Manny's running it now. So it's a real family business. So my eldest brother, Misha's first son, is running the school. But talking about the law of similars, it reminds me of something that Misha always used to teach the students, and talking about the basic principles of homeopathy. And if you think of something that is similar to a lemon, that's quite easy. You can think of other citrus fruits, or like oranges and grapefruits, or other things that are spherical, or there's different kind of levels of the similarity. But if you try and think of something that is completely opposite to a lemon, now what would that be? It could be anything, really. Is it something that is square? Is it just a piece of furniture? Is it, it could be absolutely anything. So it's much harder to find a true opposite to anything. And that's, we're looking at the two different systems of medicine, homeopathy and allopathy. And homeopathy is based on the law of similars, which is a much easier thing to work with conceptually, actually.
Absolutely. I 100% agree with you.
I think it's in our design brief to heal from things. That is, it's not something that God left out of the, design, if you like. And when everything's working as it should be in the organism, in the body, we're capable of healing from things. And homeopathy is working with that principle and supporting it, rather than saying from a place of, no, you need to take this medication to get better. Your body can't do it itself. And of course, there are some cases where people can be severely, you've got to work with the vital force, or the immune system of the person. And, so if their level of health is very compromised, then it's, harder to get that kind of chain reaction going with homeopathy. And there are lots of things that weaken the vital force, and taking strong medicines is one of them. And there are many things really in like modern society that kind of weaken vitality, and I don't want to do a big shopping list, but
no, you're welcome to do that. But you're absolutely right. The things that I've seen, and I'm sure, Luke, you are testament to this as well, the things that you have encountered with patients and how they have recovered, sometimes with one single dose, sometimes with several, perhaps. Every patient is different, but the results are just profound, and they're lasting results.
And until you experience it for yourself, that can be hard to fathom. And as you know, I was brought up, my father a homeopath, so I was treated for all sorts of things as a child. I had warts on my eyelid and on my thumb, and I distinctly remember getting teased, getting ribbed at school for that, and feeling very ashamed about it, of having this sort of blemish. And eventually with pulsatilla, they went away. And, that's quite magical. But when you're young, you don't really think about it too much. You sort of take it for granted. And then when I was older and I was at music college studying classical music, which is a cutthroat kind of business, by the way, even though it's about artistry and musicality. And I was struggling in that environment. I'd moved from, Devon, the countryside, a sort of simple, way of life where, you're a big fish in a small pond. And I'd moved to London. It was a very competitive environment. And I developed a boil on the top of my bum. And I didn't tell anyone about it. I didn't want to, I had no experience really of going to GP, and I was ashamed of it. So I didn't talk about it. Then when I went home and talked to my father and, showed it to him, and we spoke about it, and he asked me lots of questions that seemed very disconnected to that, were more about my life and my personality and what was going on for me. And then he went to his drawers and pulled out a remedy and gave me one. And then 2 weeks later, the boil had stopped, discharging pus, and it dried up. And I was like, wow, that's quite incredible that homeopathy can do that. And I think that put me on the path of, wanting to explore healing modalities. After that, I started reading astrology properly and studying astrology whilst I was a music student. And then many years later, I got into doing massage therapy, was my sort of gateway into working within the healing arts.
It's interesting, as you were speaking about your father there, Misha Noland, I remember the stories. My grandfather passed away, obviously, before, I say obviously, but sadly, I should say, passed away before I could sort of meet him. But I remember that my father used to recount stories that, your grandfather used to say to me, that he used to give, somebody would be sick and he would give one dose, and these doses were not even repeated. So true classical homeopathy. And the patient would respond and they'd get better, and he'd always have remedies in his pocket, for example. So it's just fascinating that a sugar pill, a sugar globule, or a lactose-based tablet, which has just a drop of a medicine on there, be it arnica to belladonna to zincomet, whatever it can be, has such a profound healing effect on the body, on the vital force, on the immunity, on the psyche, on the soul. How incredible is that? And I just you can see the passion, you can feel I just want to shout from the rooftops that, look, there is something here. Look, oh people, of earth, there is something here to help and assist you, be it complementary, be it in an integrative approach. It's just incredible.
And it's hard to explain when you live in a society that has a materialistic mindset, which has been on the rise since the Industrial Revolution and, Newtonian physics. And, Hahnemann came before all of that. And from, when vitalism was, not trashed in the way that it is now. And vitalism is just about seeing everything in the world as being living and sentient. And what's wrong? That is true, really. And even though the Newtonian worldview likes to view everything as sort of in a mechanical way, and this leads to that reaction, and an equal and opposite reaction, and all of that. That's true, but there are also other truths, and none of us see ourselves as like the outcome of randomized reactions according to our resident DNA. We don't see ourselves in that way. We have wishes and desires and a will, and and peculiar talents, and all of those things make us who we are. So yeah, and the people who kind of come up with the who are of the materialistic mindset, then they must have come to those opinions via random DNA rather than their own thought process. Do you know what I mean? So there's a real contradiction in the materialist worldview.
It's become very challenging, hasn't it? Life, it's a challenge because we have to. There's certain, we have to conform to certain things, and to be expressive is difficult. It's challenging to be expressive. Each individual human being has his or her own set of fingerprints. That enough is testimony to how unique each human being is. Yeah. And we can't be put into modules. It's very, very difficult.
No, that's right. And it's one of the really powerful aspects of seeing a homeopath is that your subjective reality is given credence, and you're the expert. You know yourself the best, not the homeopath. They're not the expert. I like to have a very simple mind when I'm with somebody, so that my mind isn't disturbing me or them. Do you know what I mean? And one of the questions I like to ask is, please describe that in really simple language as though you were talking to a child. Just cuts out all of the theorizing or rationalizing about it, because we're so used to compensating for our weaknesses and our vulnerabilities. And it's a kind of nice bypass to get someone to talk about their vulnerabilities a little more and explore their subconscious a little more, which no one asks us to do really in life.
I was speaking to Colin about this, and I've mentioned it actually to every guest on the show so far, but every individual, every human has a story to tell. And, I believe that very, very strongly. And of course, it's true, but it just takes time for somebody to sit down and listen. And I find during a homeopathic consultation, I personally have, even though the patient is unwell, but I've never walked away from a consultation where I actually haven't learned something.
Yeah.
Such is the manner of expression that comes out during a consultation, because we're looking at the person holistically. It's not just a cough and a cold or an abscess, like you mentioned, or a boil, there's deeper meanings. And in at least over 70% of the time, it's the mental emotional blockage or trauma that one has gone through, no matter how short-lived it may be even.
Yeah.
That is the indication, to what is actually going on at a psyche level.
Yeah, absolutely. And many different homeopaths talk about that. Arnemann mentions it in his Organon, which you have there in your background, and Kent, of course, talks about it. And people can find it. People can find that challenging to accept, but I think most of us know it to be the truth. That if we suppress things at a mental emotional level, the organism is linked. The mind and the emotions and the body are interwoven, and if that disturbance is suppressed at the mental emotional level, it's got to get out of the organism in some way. And that's when you develop, when we say you somatize something, it means that the body is expressing it because your psyche isn't allowed to express it.
UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good. UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good.
This is fascinating. I'm loving this. Now, we can talk for hours, by the way.
I'm sure we could.
I wanted to ask you actually, what was it like growing up in a homeopathic environment? So I was answering this question myself because somebody asked me a few episodes back. And personally, for me, it was at an early age, I didn't really notice it because you get used to something and you grow up.
Yeah.
But as I reached some maturity somewhat, then it sort of dawned on me that, what is actually going on? And I actually paid attention. And then, of course, the rest is history as such. But how was it for you growing up in a homeopathic community, a homeopathic environment, on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, it was, of course, you only know your own experience, but it was different from all of my friends at school. We were, living on the outside of a small village in Devon. So it was, a rural community. And we were kind of like the weirdos, really. And, every month or every fortnight, our house would be filled with students coming to learn with my father and the other teachers that he had around him. So my house was the School of Homeopathy when I was growing up. And so you learn all about, different people and then coming into your environment and, having a sense of community from that. And then, there are other aspects about it, which, like you say, and like I mentioned as well, you sort of take for granted when you're young, the fact that, we only went to the GP probably like once or twice when we were young. We didn't have vaccinations and we didn't really, I remember having mumps, but, I don't remember it being a difficult experience. And there, there are some things I remember, like, when you have a fever, and I used to get earaches a lot, another kind of indication for pulsatilla. And I remember in those times, I would have all these like strange, almost hallucinations of like, red people marching, that sort of thing. But we were given, so much freedom. We had a big house. We were encouraged to play a musical instrument, and given a lot of freedom, and didn't really, I suppose it was a bit of a bubble growing up in the School of Homeopathy, and I'm aware that my thoughts are kind of going a little bit higgledy-piggledy here. There was something I wanted to remember. Yes, there's something from school when everyone went to get the MMR vaccination, and I was in like my drama class, and the drama teacher was a dragon. Nobody liked her, and she put everyone off doing drama. So I was in with her, and everybody else apart from me went off to get their vaccination, and she started being aggressive towards me because I wasn't. She was like, "That's incredibly stupid. Why aren't you getting it?" And no, I just said, "Well, my parents don't want me to." And then I said, "Well, what do you, how much do you know about it anyway?" I think I got a bit of cheek in there, but so there's always been like a point of difference, really, and being, that can be hard, can't it? I'm sure as well.
It can be. It can be. But I was just going to say, but now as I've aged and being a father as well, and just moving on with life and having practiced for so many years, it doesn't bother me at all now. In the early days, it certainly would. I've had people who've been laughing and joking and everything that comes with anything different that you do, perhaps outside of a regulated system, perhaps. But it doesn't bother me anymore now.
No.
I'm comfortable because I have the answers. And yes, whether somebody wishes to believe or not, it doesn't matter. But as long as you give the message to them, then at least they're aware. For you, your medicine. For me, my medicine.
Yeah. To each their own. So we would always have big groups of people coming to the house, and we would always have the summer graduation party where we'd play Paul Simon Graceland loud across the front lawn and have parties, and I loved it.
I can imagine.
Very idyllic childhood in many ways. And I remember when I was 24, Misha took me to India on holiday, me and my older brother, and it was like India was his favorite place on earth, really. He was a bit of a, felt that it was his soul, his soul belonged there, really. Being there with him and seeing the difference in the reaction of people when, they asked, oh, what do you do? And he said homeopathy. And they were like, oh, doctor, come to my house and treat my uncle. And we did, and in the UK, you say, oh, my dad's a homeopath, and they're like, what's that? Or they scoff. And so that was really interesting for me, seeing that difference and experiencing the spirituality of India and seeing how homeopathy ties in with that, because it's a medicine which talks about the spirit and the spirit like vital force. And it was really nice to have that experience. I've only been once, but to just be in a country where spirituality was like more normal was a beautiful thing for me, actually. Yeah,
it's if the soul is calm, then things are generally okay. It's just where we get this this constant barrage left, right, and center. It's like the house is warm and you open the door one day and it's pouring down with rain, and you close the door back and you're within the safe confines of the house and or the home. And sometimes you open the door and it's there's sleet, or it's just bitterly cold, and again you close the door and it's safety. The soul, I think, is very much like that, and with the body itself, that it needs to be protected, but only we can protect our soul by doing the things which it needs as nourishment. And within that, I truly believe homeopathy is an element as far as healing is concerned. Hahnemann himself, even in his later years, as you very well know, was, and in the many letters that he wrote moving from one place to another, were to do with the fact that God had guided him towards this system, and he wanted the best for humanity. He absolutely loved humanity, and that love and compassion he had has certainly that was part of homeopathy. That is part of homeopathy. Homeopathy has feelings.
He was one of the first to actually treat people who were diagnosed as insane and treat them humanely, and talked about that. Very interesting man, and the first to really make a distinction between acute and chronic disease. I mean, wow, that's like no one had done that before him.
Absolutely.
Incredible. What a mind. And he was very unafraid to go into battle for his beliefs, and his beliefs were incredibly idealistic about like looking after his fellow man and, as you say, wanting the best for people. And he talks about the vital force allows you to explore the higher purposes of your existence. I mean, that is such a good remit for health, well-being. And it's one of the questions I like to ask people, although not everyone's thought about it, but why are you here? The big question. Let's talk about it.
Now, I know that it must have been, obviously, as you've just shared with me, it's been quite an interesting journey. And, growing up within a homeopathic community and, of course, having family who were interested is always a very big plus point as well. Yeah. But I know that as a result of this, you're actually now also teaching, aren't you, at the School of Homeopathy itself? Yeah. How's that getting along? How are you going along with that? And what is it specifically that you're focusing on, and what's it like, actually being in front of students? Can I call them students, or those who wish to learn, perhaps? Of all ages as well, and
of all ages.
Backgrounds. What's that like? Do share.
Thank you. Yes. Well, I graduated in 2018, so it's not so long ago that I was a student too, on the course, and I think that puts me in a great position to have it fresh in my mind what the student experience is like and what the workload is like, and how amazing a journey it can be to discover the treasure within homeopathy, because for me homeopathy is one of the things that really unites left and right brain in a unique way. We get to, do all the analysis. We get to synthesize in a holistic way. We use our intuition. We use our, analytical mind. We use software that accesses a database that's been, added to over 200 years of, clinical cases and provings of different substances. So it's a very, very creative melting pot, homeopathy. And I absolutely love bringing my kind of enthusiasm and passion for the subject to newcomers. So I mostly teach the first years. So I'm teaching them the organon, and fundamental principles of healing. We talk about homeostasis, the doctrine of polarity. We introduce the miasms in year 1, and they get to learn Kent's repertory. So all of those things are, part of the teaching. One of the other things that is part of School of Homeopathy is something called Mappa Mundi, which is like an ancient Greek system of looking at the 4 elements, so that you can sort of see them, how they operate in nature and how they operate in human beings, when they're both healthy and when they're sick. So that's one of the things that I sort of specialize in.
That's something that you've worked on yourself, isn't it?
It's I've worked on it. Misha worked on it a lot, and Joseph Reeves from Israel, he worked on it a lot, and sort of took the original idea from Empedocles and Hippocrates. They are the Hippocratic temperaments. So the founding father of medicine used this system of seeing choleric, phlegmatic, melancholic, and sanguine types. And typology is very interesting. Like Jung used it as well. And astrology uses it. So something that allows me to bring together other disciplines and apply that to my understanding of patients in homeopathy.
That's actually quite fascinating, because you have several tools there to be able to analyze a patient, but they actually slot in so beautifully within the system and structure of homeopathy itself.
Yeah, definitely. And I think one of the great thinkers in the UK was Peter Fraser. He sadly passed away too last year. And, he's somebody who is, he's got a kind of like quite a broad esoteric, awareness of different esoteric subjects. And he brings those in to homeopathy. And I think that's very fertile when you bring something else and you're not just using, homeopathy, or not just looking at the established materia medica pictures, and you're coming to it with an open mind as well. So the teaching, I love it. It's one of my favorite things to do, actually. And I was nervous when I first started. I wanted to be uber prepared, and these days I'm more relaxed about it. I can go away from my my sort of structured lesson plans and notes and be more interactive with the students and sort of gauging what their particular needs are. And the numbers have been good as well since COVID. I think it's that whole thing and the lockdown and that sort of awareness of health and the kind of way we interface with the conventional medical framework now is leading people to things like homeopathy, and they want to study because they've seen good results, and and oftentimes it's mothers who see good results for their children, and they think, I want to do that, I want to study. The school also has a correspondence course where you can do the work from sort of an e-learning for 4 years, and you have to have your clinical hours, etc. But those two sort of things combined, the school is doing very well.
I suppose to get the message out there, I think it's really, really important. A correspondence course can do great things, just as well as actually attending a course in person. It really depends on one's background and aptitude and willingness, isn't it?
Oh, do you know what? Sometimes the correspondence students, they do 1 or 2 years and then they join the attendance course. And to have that tenacity to get through all of that material on your own, often they're just they're so on it when they do come to the attendance course, because they've done it off their own bat, and that's it's impressive. Yeah.
I wanted to ask you about new provings. I
Yeah.
know that you've been involved with a number of provings related to some new remedies. Perhaps you can just share some of your findings and, the process involved and how you're finding that.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it was something started by the movement of doing provings again was really given a lot of energy by Jeremy Sher. And then Misha followed suit and other people. And there was a real burgeoning of like willingness to undertake provings in the 90s. A lot more animal remedies were added to the Materia Medica, where a lot of the information in the homeopathic database comes from herbalism, and therefore there's a lot of plant remedies. And at the same time, there was work done, by homeopaths looking at the periodic table and, looking at some of the lesser known elements in the periodic table. And the proving itself is like the pillar of homeopathy. It's how you can gather together a broad picture of a new substance. And what Hahnemann was doing was looking at, substances that were toxic, basically, and were being used by allopaths at the time. So mercurius, one of our, remedies, was being given. So mercury was being given to try to cure syphilis, and it was suppressing it and, creating a mercury disease. So Hahnemann said, we must have a proving on mercury. Those symptoms went into the Materia Medica, and now it becomes a remedy that can treat a specific miasm and a specific set of symptoms, if you like, or someone who's got an inheritance from a family that had syphilis suppressed by mercury. That travels all the way down the genes to somebody born now, and they might need the remedy mercury. So the provings we're doing now, of course, are using contemporary people, and contemporary issues come up in those provings in a way that they haven't done in provings of the past. So there are certain things that are much more prevalent now that aren't really talked about in the older texts of homeopathy, and that are talked about in new provings. So Misha's first proving, believe it or not, was the AIDS knowzone. So, which is, made from the blood of someone with, tested HIV positive. And of course, in homeopathy, that is taken to a level where materially, it doesn't exist anymore. But then you do the proving, and it's the group of people don't know what it is, and then they have to record their symptoms and experiences over a period of time. And what we found is that the group who take the proving in our school know each other. They've been together for 2 years studying, and then the proving itself is also it's a kind of like looking at the way group dynamics work, because the group becomes a lot more bonded by the experience, and you see a lot of coherence in the types of symptoms and the type of life experiences they have in that 2-month period. So the group seems to amplify the effects of the remedy in our experience. There's, in the old days, provings were done with very, very low potencies, and you would get some very nasty physical symptoms. We use 30C, so it's more like you will get some symptoms, of the nervous system, but it's very unlikely to kind of, it's not toxic, basically. So you get more of the picture of coherence on the level of the mental and emotional and the nervous system. And basically the remedy will affect each person slightly differently because everyone is unique. Everyone has a different constitution. So it's very difficult to work with all of that data. And, some will undoubtedly be belonging to the individual, and some of it will be belonging to the influence of the remedy. And so you have to kind of see when 3 or 4 people have had a similar symptom, then that makes it more likely to be part of the remedy. So some of the remedies that we did recently were like a proving of two-toed sloth. And so, it's a mammal remedy. And my brother lives in Costa Rica. So, there was his partner at the time was a vet, and the sloth got injured. And so we were able to get a hair sample of the sloth. So the hair, has the DNA. And we did a proving of sloth, and it had a very coherent picture that is like, aligned with the, what we know about mammal remedies already, which we don't have to go into now, but there are, if you're interested, all you have to do is type, mammal remedies in homeopathy into Google, and you'll find articles about, what the core issues of the mammals are. And they're an interesting group of remedies, and they're needed right now by people. I mean, even in the classical materia medica, there was laccaninum and, so dog's milk and
Yes.
cat's milk were already there, and cow's milk. So the older homeopaths already could see that milk as a substance was needed for people to heal. Yeah.
That's the sheer comprehensiveness of homeopathy as well. That because of this law of similars, that these new provings are taking place, and we were mentioning a book earlier on before our chat here today, that with remedies for new ailments, ailments not necessarily new. Let me rephrase that, are very current now today. In the 21st century, in a connected world.
Yes.
Where we're bombarded with very different frequencies than perhaps we were 100 years ago, certainly.
Without question, life has changed immeasurably, and the pace of life has increased immeasurably. And I don't know about your experience, but for me, it seems you have to give remedies more frequently to most people these days.
Yes.
Maybe because the pace of life is so sped up, compared to 20.
Everyone's in a state of being not everybody, but majority are highly strung.
Yeah. And highly stimulated by the digital world, especially. But
Now, you mentioned provings, and you have a new book, so we'd love to hear about that. Please do share with us what you've written and what it's about.
Thank you. Yeah, it was. It came out of my experience at the school, and so basically, the school's curriculum is very, very broad. So you learn in the first 2 years the classical materia medica, really, and classical techniques. And then in years 3 and 4, it's quite influenced by Rajan Sankaran, and, a methodology where you can be a bit more expansive with how you look at remedies. You can get clues from the patient as to, a particular kingdom of remedies that you would be looking in. And so it's looking at, the natural sciences and our understanding there, and sort of applying that to people. And it's very broad. And I was taught lots of stuff, and I wanted to be able to make that accessible for myself. So to make a kind of desktop guide to the animal kingdom, that was my intention. There were several books already that talked about, different groups like spiders, snakes, insects, birds, mammals, and sea animals, them all into one book and make it quite concise. And one of the remits as well was to quote provings and to quote other people in a way that was kind of compiling what all the different people had said over the last 30 years to make it really crystal clear to a newcomer or a graduate that this is what these animal remedies are about. And there were a couple of patients I had while I was under supervision, where it was like everything I'd been taught about how an animal remedy would present was just like, bang. I was like, wow, that person so needs an animal remedy. It's so aligns with what I've been taught. And that experience powerfully amplifies, I've been taught this, and I've seen it in a very real way. So that, I think, inspired me to write about animal remedies. I mean, animals are hugely fascinating anyway. And it seemed at the time, Jonathan Hardy came to teach at the school, and I've seen him teach at the faculty conferences and seen his cases. And I do prescribe a lot of animal remedies myself as well. So I loved writing the book. It was a labor of love for sure. Took about 3 years, I think, with periods of, more fallow periods, and then the editing at the end and doing all the referencing at the end was, took
Uni
a long
days.
time. Yeah, uni days, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm really glad that my publishers sort of pushed me to do it in a very rigorous way. So yeah, that's the book.
What's
Really.
the name of the book?
The book is called Animalia or Animalia, and it's looking at the themes of the spiders, birds, insects, mammals, snakes, and sea animals mainly. And it also introduces you to the way that I use Mappamundi, and each animal group is kind of put onto the circle of elements and temperaments to show you, well, just orientate what the themes of them are. There's basically every homeopath knows about the remedy tarantula and its benefit for children who are hyperactive. So the diagnosis might be ADHD, and we see a child that doesn't eat very much, that likes to dance and likes to move and is very, hyper. They might have certain food cravings, and they might even like wait and hide and jump onto people's backs. I have actually seen that. And children are great because they don't compensate. They act out what remedy they need. So the spiders in general have some of that about them, and so to know that means that you might give tarantula first, but there might be other spider remedies out there that are more specific or more unique for that person.
Really, really interesting, actually. And I think what's very, very commendable, of course, is that you've put it all together, because there are several texts available, of course, but to put everything together in one book, I think makes it a very good focal reference point, which can be actually used quite methodically now. So, congratulations on that. And wishing you great success with the book and with the remedies being used by homeopaths.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good. UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good.
Appreciate it.
So what's on the horizon? I'm always fascinated. I do ask everybody that I talk to, what are you working on? Anything you'd like to share?
Well, it's so now I have a 2-year-old. I'm basically treading water with work. So I don't have any new books in the offing just yet. I would like to write again one day. Absolutely. We do a new proving with the school every year, and my teaching role is going to get bigger within the attendance course of the school, which I'm excited for. And I continue to work with Radar Opus, and that's also a good collaboration because I'm a big repertory guy. I learned so much from working with them about the repertory and all the kind of hidden corners within it. And I've even kind of made a couple of my own repertories, which you can use in Radar Opus, that sort of simplify picking mind symptoms, which can be very, very challenging, finding the right one. So at the moment, I'm kind of keeping the ball rolling with the repertory side of things. I'm working on a Mappamundi repertory, which kind of lists some of the remedies that could be aligned with each element. And my other idea is that the Boninghausen therapeutic pocketbook, an amazing repertory, but only has the original remedies of homeopathy in it. So my idea is to just make a simplified structure of the pocketbook, looking at the affinities and sensations and modalities, and putting in the new remedies alongside the ones that are in the original, so that you can work in the Boninghausen way and still have access to new clinical findings and new provings.
That sounds fascinating, actually, and it brings the repertory into the 21st century. Well, it will bring the repertory into the 21st century, certainly.
Yeah.
Great. Luke Norland, it's been an absolute pleasure. Really happy and delighted you came on the show. And of course, I certainly hope later this year you will come back and we can talk some more.
I'd love to. I really appreciate you reaching out to me and getting in touch, and for asking such good questions and being a good listener. Thank you.
It's been wonderful. I've learned a great deal from you. So thank you. God bless you. And hopefully we'll talk very, very soon.
I'd love that. Thank you.
And now it's time for reflection with poems of healing. This one is called Stray. Loose words like stray dogs. You've to be careful out of the fence. It says stray away right now. It's a warning, to be precise. These are the words of a beggar of attention, seeking, always looking for quiet and peaceful inspiration. Words in free rein, they pass quickly. They can bite in this moment and hurt, and their eyes are lost for the loneliness. They require care like the wounds you lick on your left paw, the burning bruises, what's left from the accident. Heal me, but don't get too close, you tell me. Don't walk away, do not abandon me, save me. Your words like thoughts roam loose, like tramps' dogs, stray thoughts. Stray and frail is how one outlives to himself. Dangerous perhaps if you approach towards without caution. A stray is like living roaming by streets, and that's how I feel you, like those who survived to the events that have prevailed, and now is carried by himself at the mercy of his winds. It takes care, it takes time. This poem was written by Vincenza Lofino, published in Sauti, Poems of Healing by the United Nations. I do hope you've enjoyed the Homeopathy Health Show here on UK Health Radio, the world's #1 talk health radio. Tune in next time for more things homeopathy, interviews and segments on the healing possibilities that homeopathy can bring you. And don't forget to visit UK Health Radio online at www.ukhealthradio.com to see the many other amazing shows available to listen live and on demand. Or why not download the app from the iOS and Android stores. Until next time, stay safe and take care.